Stanley Kubrick's films are more than masterpieces. They are riddles, wrapped in mystery and laced with provocative questions about power and control. His work exposed unsettling truths, and perhaps concealed some even darker ones. In 1968, 2001, A Space Odyssey redefined cinema and captivated audiences with its stunning depiction of humanity's evolution. Behind the scenes, whispers began. Had Kubrick's genius attracted the attention of NASA? Some claim his perfectionism made him the ideal candidate to stage humanity's greatest illusion, the Apollo 11 moon landing. By 1980, The Shining added fuel to the fire. Kubrick's adaptation of Stephen King's novel wasn't just a horror masterpiece. Theorists argue it was a veiled confession. The infamous Room 237 became a symbol, sparking endless theories about its hidden meaning and Kubrick's role in global deceptions. And then came Eyes Wide Shut, a bold and controversial film exploring the rituals of power among the elite. Just days after presenting the final cut, Kubrick was dead. Official reports cited natural causes, but speculation abounds. Had he revealed too much? His films, his life, and his death form a puzzle. Was Kubrick a reluctant participant in the world's greatest conspiracies, or a fearless whistleblower, leaving behind a trail of secrets for those willing to follow? Perhaps the truth lies hidden in plain sight. The year was 1964, and the world was perched on the knife's edge of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a bitter competition that extended beyond borders and ideologies, into the cosmos itself. When President John F. Kennedy declared America's intent to land a man on the moon before the decade's end, it wasn't just a scientific endeavor, it was a statement of dominance. But by the mid-1960s, NASA's ambitions were faltering. A string of high-profile failures had exposed the program's vulnerabilities, and doubts swirled about whether the Apollo program could meet its deadline. Losing the space race to the Soviets wasn't an option. The stakes were too high. This was when, according to some theorists, the government turned to an unlikely savior, Stanley Kubrick. Born in 1928 in the Bronx, Kubrick's early life was shaped by a precocious fascination with the visual world. His love for photography led to a job as a staff photographer for Look magazine, where his uncanny ability to capture the essence of his subjects hinted at a deeper, almost obsessive pursuit of perfection. But Kubrick wasn't content with still images. He transitioned to filmmaking in the 1950s, crafting low-budget but ambitious projects like Killer's Kiss and The Killing. By the time he directed Paths of Glory and Spartacus in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Kubrick had established himself as a visionary, a meticulous artist with an unparalleled eye for detail and a reputation for pushing his cast and crew to their limits. His work was more than just cinema. It was a study of humanity's contradictions, our ambitions, fears, and capacity for destruction. Films like Dr. Strangelove demonstrated his ability to blend biting satire with chilling commentary on global politics. Kubrick wasn't just telling stories, he was holding up a mirror to the world, often reflecting truths many would rather not face. By the time he embarked on 2001, A Space Odyssey, Kubrick was no longer just a director, he was an auteur, a filmmaker whose vision could redefine an entire medium. And it was this singular talent that may have drawn the attention of the most powerful people in the world. Kubrick was already making waves in Hollywood, but his latest project was unlike anything the world had seen. 2001, A Space Odyssey wasn't just a film, it was a meticulous reimagining of humanity's place in the universe. Working with Arthur C. Clarke and a team of NASA consultants, Kubrick was creating cinematic magic. The sets were so detailed, so eerily lifelike, that they blurred the line between fiction and reality. Allegedly, officials within the US government, perhaps even NASA itself, approached Kubrick. The proposal was simple but staggering. Use the technology and techniques he was developing for 2001 to create a backup plan for the moon landing. If Apollo 11 failed, the footage Kubrick created could be broadcast to the world instead. Some even suggest the entire moon landing was staged from the start, with Kubrick's artistic vision shaping one of history's most iconic moments. The evidence. For those who look closely, it's everywhere. The lunar landscapes in 2001 bear a striking resemblance to the footage of Apollo 11's moonwalk. The lighting, the shadows, the surreal stillness, all echo Kubrick's style. Then there's the matter of Fred Ordway, a NASA consultant who worked directly with Kubrick on 2001. Could Ordway and his team have fed Kubrick classified information to ensure absolute realism and perhaps something more? Kubrick's obsessive nature only deepens the intrigue. Archival footage shows him scrutinizing every detail, from the texture of the moon's surface to the behavior of weightlessness. He pushed his crew to the brink, demanding perfection. Was it just his artistic drive, or was Kubrick preparing for a secret project that demanded absolute believability? Conspiracy theorists have long postulated that the 1969 moon landing might have been staged, or even outright faked. The roots of this theory lie in the immense political stakes of the space race. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a battle for technological and ideological dominance. The Apollo 11 mission became a symbol of American ingenuity and power, but the rapid timeline and overwhelming technical challenges led some to suspect the landing was a carefully orchestrated illusion. Key elements of the conspiracy include alleged inconsistencies in the lunar footage. Shadows that appear to point in multiple directions are seen by skeptics as evidence of studio lighting, while the lack of stars in the lunar sky has been explained by NASA as a result of camera exposure settings. The fluttering of the American flag on the moon despite the absence of an atmosphere is another anomaly frequently cited. These perceived inconsistencies have fueled decades of speculation that the event was staged on Earth. Supporters of the theory argue that such an elaborate hoax would require a creative mastermind capable of simulating the lunar environment with extraordinary realism. Enter Stanley Kubrick. His groundbreaking work on 2001, A Space Odyssey, not only demonstrated his unparalleled ability to create stunningly realistic depictions of space, but also introduced innovative techniques in special effects. Beyond the awe-inspiring visuals and philosophical depth, the film pioneered techniques that would forever change the landscape of filmmaking. Among these, Kubrick's use of front projection revolutionized the integration of live action and backgrounds, enabling him to create eerily lifelike depictions of alien worlds and vast, uncharted spaces. Front projection wasn't just a technical achievement, it was a tool that allowed Kubrick to construct environments with unprecedented realism. By projecting high-resolution images onto reflective surfaces, he could seamlessly blend actors and sets with expansive landscapes. This technique, showcased in scenes like the lunar excavation of the monolith, delivered a sense of authenticity that left audiences questioning where the set ended and reality began. Coupled with this innovation was Kubrick's unparalleled mastery of lighting and shadow. His obsession with precision created a visual language that lent an almost tactile quality to the film's images. Every shadow was calculated, every beam of light deliberate, crafting a hyper-realistic portrayal of space that critics and audiences hailed as indistinguishable from reality. But what made 2001 truly remarkable wasn't just its technological breakthroughs. It was Kubrick's collaboration with NASA consultants. Seeking accuracy, Kubrick worked closely with scientific experts to ensure that every element, from spacecraft design to zero-gravity movement, reflected cutting-edge knowledge of the time. They argue that Kubrick's proximity to NASA granted him access to insider knowledge that went beyond the film's needs, knowledge that might have made him uniquely equipped to simulate the Apollo moon landing. These claims hinge on more than just technical prowess. The lunar landscapes in 2001 bear an uncanny resemblance to the footage of Apollo 11's moonwalk. The stark lighting, the uneven shadows, and the ethereal stillness of the surface, elements meticulously recreated in the film, mirror the visuals presented in NASA's historic broadcast. For theorists, this similarity isn't coincidence. It's evidence of Kubrick's involvement in crafting a backup, or even entirely fabricated, version of the moon landing. In the end, Kubrick's work on 2001 didn't just redefine cinema, it blurred the boundaries between fiction and reality. The same techniques that brought alien landscapes to life could, in theory, have been employed to create the most convincing illusion in history. Whether or not Kubrick played a role in the Apollo program, his legacy as a master of illusion remains unshaken, leaving behind a tantalizing question. Did his pursuit of truth lead him to create one of the greatest deceptions of all time? For conspiracy theorists, the moon landing wasn't just a political gambit, it was a masterstroke in narrative control. They believe Kubrick's alleged involvement wasn't merely about creating a spectacle. It was about crafting a global illusion that would cement America's dominance in the Cold War. And while the official story remains unshaken, the whispers of conspiracy refuse to fade, suggesting a deeper mistrust of the institutions that shape our understanding of history. By the time 2001 premiered in 1968, the seeds of conspiracy had already taken root. The film was hailed as a masterpiece, its visuals so convincing that many questioned whether they were watching science fiction or a glimpse of reality. Just a year later, Apollo 11 landed on the moon, or so the story goes. If Kubrick was involved, it wasn't just about creating a spectacle. It was about shaping a narrative, one that would cement America's dominance in the space race. But such a collaboration would have come at a cost. In entering the orbit of such powerful forces, Kubrick may have become part of a shadowy network that controlled more than the stars. The question remains, was 2001 simply a film? Or was it Kubrick's first step into a world far stranger than fiction? Kubrick's alleged collaboration on the moon landing didn't just require technical expertise, it demanded a level of secrecy that could shatter the soul of anyone caught in its grip. If the stories are to be believed, accepting NASA's proposal wasn't just a professional challenge, it was a pact that tied Kubrick to a shadowy elite. The proposal came wrapped in promises and warnings. For his cooperation, Kubrick would gain access to the highest echelons of technology, resources, and power. But with those privileges came unspoken rules. He would become privy to secrets so vast, so world-altering, that even speaking them aloud could invite retribution. In whispered accounts, Kubrick's meetings with these government officials and intelligence agents were less a negotiation and more an initiation. Picture it, the dimly lit back rooms of Washington, D.C., with stern-faced men in tailored suits sliding folders across the table. Inside, blueprints, photographs, and classified dossiers hinted at the scale of the operation. Kubrick, always the perfectionist, would have dissected every page, his sharp mind piecing together the enormity of what he was being asked to create. But what did Kubrick see in those meetings? Some claim he was exposed to more than just lunar landscapes. They say these encounters offered him a glimpse into a world where truth was malleable, where power resided not in nations, but in those who controlled the narratives that defined them. This was not the Hollywood of actors and directors. This was a cabal of puppeteers pulling the strings of history. What Kubrick accepted, or perhaps couldn't refuse, was a Faustian bargain. His cooperation would grant him the artistic freedom to create films like 2001, A Space Odyssey, but it also chained him to a machine that valued secrecy over humanity. For a man who spent his life exploring the contradictions of power and morality, this burden would leave a lasting mark on his work, and perhaps on his conscience. If Kubrick had second thoughts, they didn't show. At least, not publicly. But for those who study his films, the signs are there. Hidden in the meticulous framing, the deliberate use of symbols, and the uncanny ability to hold a mirror up to power, Kubrick's work suggests a man who saw too much and left clues for others to find. Whether these clues were a cry for help or an attempt to share his burden, we may never know. The collaboration, if it happened, wasn't just a partnership. It was an induction into a world Kubrick would spend the rest of his career grappling with, on screen and off. Kubrick's collaboration allegedly introduces him to a shadowy network of elites. These individuals, wielding immense power, control not just nations but narratives. Kubrick becomes a reluctant insider, privy to secrets he cannot unlearn. In the late 1970s, America was grappling with the fallout of Watergate and the Vietnam War, a time when public trust in institutions had eroded. Kubrick, living as a recluse in England, had grown increasingly obsessed with control over his films, his environment, and perhaps his narrative. By 1980, Stanley Kubrick was at the height of his power in Hollywood. He could make any film he wanted, so why did he choose The Shining, a popular horror novel, as his next project? On the surface, it seemed an odd choice for a director whose prior films tackled grand philosophical themes and societal critiques. Yet beneath the blood-soaked hallways and ghostly apparitions of the Overlook Hotel, some believe The Shining served a more subversive purpose. It was Kubrick's veiled confession. The film departs dramatically from Stephen King's novel, a change that puzzled fans and even angered King himself. But for Kubrick, the story of Jack Torrance, a man consumed by the secrets of a haunted hotel, offered a unique canvas. If one looks closely, The Shining is less about external ghosts and more about the psychological toll of keeping dark truths buried. Could this have been Kubrick's way of expressing the burden of his own secrets? Room 237 provides a key to decoding the film's deeper meaning. In King's novel, the room is numbered 217, but Kubrick changed it. Officially, the Timberline Lodge, where exterior shots were filmed, requested the change to avoid deterring guests from staying in room 217. Yet theorists see a darker motive. The number 237, representing the moon's average distance from Earth in thousands of miles, is believed to be Kubrick's nod to the Apollo 11 mission. The scenes involving room 237 are laden with symbolism. Danny, wearing his Apollo 11 sweater, is first shown crouched on the iconic hexagonal carpet, a pattern that evokes NASA's Houston launch pad. The moment he rises from this position, the Saturn V rocket emblazoned on his sweater, with the words Apollo 11 stitched below, feels unmistakably deliberate. It's as if Kubrick is guiding viewers toward a secret hidden in plain sight. When Danny enters the forbidden room, the act becomes a metaphorical journey into truths so vast and unsettling they defy comprehension. Later, Jack enters the same room and encounters a beautiful woman who transforms into a decaying crone. The unsettling transformation feels like a metaphor for the allure and horror of uncovering hidden truths. But it's what happens after that truly fuels conspiracy theories. Jack denies the encounter ever occurred, lying to Wendy, much like someone might lie about a truth too dangerous to reveal. The Overlook Hotel itself is a labyrinthine prison, much like the tangled web of lies Kubrick may have felt ensnared in. Jack's descent into madness parallels Kubrick's own alleged struggles with the weight of his supposed involvement in a grand deception. Jack, much like Kubrick, knows too much. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, becomes a mantra of monotony, a reflection of the relentless effort required to maintain a facade. Consider the film's infamous Gold Room scene, where Jack converses with a ghostly bartender named Lloyd. The setting is opulent, otherworldly and menacing, an eerie metaphor for the secret gatherings of the powerful elite. Jack's line, "I'd give my soul for just a glass of beer," resonates as a chilling nod to a Faustian bargain, the kind Kubrick might have grappled with himself. Kubrick's obsession with detail extended to the impossible architecture of the Overlook Hotel. Hallways lead to nowhere, windows defy spatial logic, and the geography of the building shifts in ways that disorient the viewer. These architectural anomalies mirror the disorientation of living within a constructed narrative, a reality where the truth is obscured by carefully orchestrated lies. Yet the most haunting element of The Shining lies in its ending. As the camera zooms in on an old photograph of Jack Torrance at the hotel's 1921 4th of July ball, we're left to ponder. Has Jack always been part of the Overlook? Is he trapped in a cycle of eternal recurrence? For Kubrick, this could symbolize his own inescapable entanglement with the secrets of the elite. Through The Shining, Kubrick transformed a ghost story into a meditation on guilt, isolation, and the psychological toll of secrecy. It wasn't just a horror film, it was a coded message, a way for Kubrick to confront the demons he couldn't exorcise in real life. If his collaboration with NASA was his original sin, The Shining was his confession, veiled in fiction but unmistakable to those willing to see the truth beneath the surface. While The Shining stands as the most overt reference to Kubrick's potential involvement in the moon landing and secretive circles of power, his exploration of control and the mechanisms that dictate human behavior was far from new. These themes, woven throughout his earlier works, not only reveal Kubrick's deepening awareness of societal manipulation, but also provide the foundation for the cryptic messages that would define his later films. Kubrick's cinematic universe in the 1970s was marked by his unparalleled ability to dissect the systems that govern human behavior. Films like A Clockwork Orange and Barry Lyndon showcased his growing fascination with the mechanisms of control, whether through psychological manipulation or societal hierarchies. Yet, beneath their polished narratives and arresting visuals, some believe these films carried coded warnings, a subtle rebellion against the forces Kubrick had become entangled with. It's the early 1970s, the counterculture revolution is in full swing, but the powers that be are adapting. Governments, intelligence agencies, and corporate interests are refining their methods of influence, shifting from overt control to the subtleties of propaganda and behavioral conditioning. Kubrick, ever the observer, seems to channel these realities into his work. Take A Clockwork Orange. Adapted from Anthony Burgess's novel, the film delves into the horrors of rehabilitation through state-sponsored psychological reprogramming. On one level, it's a dystopian satire, but for those inclined to look deeper, it's a chilling reflection of real-world experiments. During the same period, whispers of MKUltra, the CIA's mind control program, had begun to surface. Could Kubrick have drawn inspiration from these dark corridors of power? The film's infamous Ludovico technique, which forces the protagonist to associate violence with physical revulsion, eerily mirrors accounts of experimental conditioning techniques used by intelligence agencies. Then there's Barry Lyndon, a period drama that seems at first glance to be a departure from Kubrick's usual fare. Yet, the story of an opportunistic outsider climbing the ranks of 18th century society offers a stark critique of class systems and the ruthless power dynamics they enforce. Every frame is a tableau of beauty and control, its meticulously composed shots suggesting that even the most elegant facades mask darker truths. It's as though Kubrick is saying, look closer, the systems that govern us are as deceptive as they are enduring. Kubrick's growing awareness of the elite's influence wasn't confined to his films. By this time, he had largely withdrawn from public life, choosing to live in self-imposed exile in England. There, he operated like a general overseeing a war room, his secluded estate doubling as both sanctuary and fortress. This isolation, some theorize, wasn't just a preference for privacy, but a calculated move to protect himself from the very forces his films critiqued. Consider the recurring motifs of surveillance and control that begin to emerge more prominently in his work. In A Clockwork Orange, the omnipresent authority of the state looms large, manipulating and monitoring its citizens under the guise of maintaining order. In Barry Lyndon, power is exercised not through overt violence but through subtler means: marriage, inheritance, and the rigid structures of class. By the late 1970s, Kubrick's films seemed to take on an almost prophetic quality. They weren't just stories, they were warnings. And while his critiques were veiled in fiction, they carried a resonance that felt all too real. For Kubrick, the camera wasn't just a tool for storytelling. It was a weapon, a way to dissect the forces shaping society and perhaps to fight back against the unseen hands that sought to shape him. Whether intentional or not, Kubrick's work during this period cemented his reputation as a filmmaker who saw the world differently. He didn't just observe, he illuminated. And for those in power, illumination can be the most dangerous act of all. By the 1990s, Kubrick's reputation as a cinematic genius was unassailable. His films had delved into the dark recesses of human nature, society's underpinnings, and the shadowy forces that pull the strings behind the scenes. But Eyes Wide Shut was different. It wasn't just a film, it was a calculated risk, an unflinching look at the secret rituals of power and control. A film that some believe cost Kubrick his life. At this stage in his career, Kubrick had spent decades meticulously crafting a legacy as a filmmaker of unparalleled vision and precision. His reclusive lifestyle, marked by long absences between projects, only deepened his mystique. After the release of Full Metal Jacket in 1987, Kubrick retreated from the public eye. Over a decade passed before his next project, leaving fans and critics speculating about what could possibly follow. In the late 1990s, the world teetered on the brink of a new millennium, gripped by fears of Y2K and the rapid rise of the internet. Beneath the surface, whispers of secret societies and elite control grew louder, fueled by decades of conspiracy theories. Against this backdrop, Kubrick emerged with a project that stunned even those closest to him. The subject: a clandestine world of wealth, secrecy, and depravity. Kubrick's choice to adapt Arthur Schnitzler's novella Traumnovelle into Eyes Wide Shut seemed both unexpected and inevitable. The story's themes of desire, secrecy, and power mirrored the motifs that had long fascinated him. Kubrick transformed the original setting of 1920s Vienna into a surreal and modern New York, reimagining a tale of bourgeois infidelity as a labyrinthine exploration of power and its abuses. The casting of Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, then one of Hollywood's most high-profile couples, added an additional layer of intrigue. Kubrick's obsessive secrecy during production, coupled with his penchant for meticulously crafting every frame, left many wondering, was he revealing something more than fiction? Eyes Wide Shut, some argue, was Kubrick's way of exposing a real-world secretive organization, one he allegedly gained access to during his purported involvement in staging the moon landing. They argue that his insider knowledge of such elite circles, obtained while working alongside government and intelligence agencies, allowed him to embed chillingly authentic details of their rituals and hierarchies into the film. This interpretation positions Eyes Wide Shut not just as a provocative drama, but as a bold attempt to unmask the mechanisms of global power and control he had witnessed firsthand. Kubrick's perfectionism reached new heights during the production of Eyes Wide Shut. The film became one of the longest shoots in history, spanning over 400 days. Kubrick controlled every aspect of the production, from the precise placement of props to the rhythm of the actors' performances. This obsessive attention to detail wasn't just about creating a visually stunning film. It was about ensuring every moment resonated with deeper meaning. At the heart of the film lies the secret society, a gathering of masked elites engaging in unsettling rituals of dominance and submission. The scenes are unnerving, theatrical, and otherworldly. The red-lit mansions, the haunting choral score, and the faceless masks evoke dread and fascination. For those familiar with Kubrick's work, these choices feel deliberate, a veiled commentary on power structures hidden in plain sight. Conspiracy theorists have long been fascinated by the notion of shadowy organizations like the Bilderberg Group or the Illuminati, groups they claim operate in secrecy to control global events. The Illuminati, established in 1776 in Bavaria by Adam Weishaupt, was originally conceived as a radical Enlightenment-era society aimed at fostering reason, secularism, and individual liberty. At a time when the Catholic Church and monarchies dominated Europe, the Illuminati sought to challenge these entrenched powers through education, intellectual discourse, and clandestine operations. Their methods included infiltrating influential institutions such as universities and courts, leveraging their positions to spread their ideals. Though officially disbanded in 1785 after being outlawed by Bavarian authorities, the Illuminati's name and myth endured, becoming synonymous with secretive elites who manipulate world affairs from the shadows. Modern conspiracy theories reimagine the Illuminati as an omnipotent organization pulling the strings of global events. Allegedly, their methods of control include infiltrating governments, influencing financial systems, and manipulating cultural narratives to shape public perception. Proponents of these theories point to their supposed use of symbolism, such as the all-seeing eye and pyramid, which appear on the US dollar bill and in various works of art and media. These symbols are said to serve as both a mark of dominance and a covert communication between members. Rituals, often described as resembling Masonic ceremonies, are alleged to play a crucial role in reinforcing loyalty and hierarchy within the group. These rituals reportedly involve oaths of secrecy, symbolic sacrifices, and acts designed to strip initiates of individual identity, binding them to the collective will of the Illuminati. The Bilderberg Group, established in 1954, operates with a starkly different public facade, yet provokes similar suspicions. Founded to promote dialogue between Europe and North America during the Cold War, the group convenes annual meetings attended by heads of state, CEOs, military leaders, and influential media figures. While its stated purpose is to foster international cooperation, its secretive nature, no press, no public agendas, and no formal records, has fueled accusations that it functions as a shadow government, shaping global policy to serve elite interests. Critics claim that the Bilderberg Group exerts its influence through strategic alignment of policies across nations. For example, the group has been accused of coordinating economic strategies that prioritize the interests of multinational corporations over those of ordinary citizens. Allegations include manipulating financial markets, orchestrating trade agreements, and using crises, both real and manufactured, to consolidate power. The group's power dynamics rely on its exclusivity. Only the most influential figures are invited, and decisions are said to be made through consensus among these elites, leaving the broader public with no transparency or recourse. The group's closed-door meetings have further intensified speculation about their use of rituals to reinforce secrecy and allegiance. These are described by theorists as symbolic acts that emphasize the group's collective power and the individual's subservience to it. Alleged initiation ceremonies might include symbolic acts of submission or the exchange of confidential information as a guarantee of loyalty. While these claims remain unverified, they echo similar allegations against other secretive organizations, suggesting a broader pattern of elite control. These theories propose that such groups maintain their influence through economic manipulation, control over the media, and strategic political alliances. Alleged incidents, such as coordinated financial decisions during economic crises or the dissemination of unified media narratives, are often pointed to as evidence of their hidden hand. The concentration of wealth among a small elite and recurring instances of policy synchronization across nations further fuel suspicions. For those who believe in these conspiracies, the Bilderberg Group and Illuminati represent more than secret organizations. They embody the fears of a world where power is concentrated and democracy is an illusion. Whether these groups are real or symbolic, their influence on the popular imagination is undeniable, and their alleged existence provides a compelling framework for understanding the dynamics of global control. Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut taps directly into these fears, portraying a secret society where power and privilege collide in unsettling rituals. For conspiracy theorists, the film is more than an exploration of human desire. It's a chilling exposé of the elite's hidden mechanisms of control. The infamous masked procession with its haunting choral chant and a figure presiding as the Hierophant resonates eerily with accounts of ceremonies attributed to groups like the Illuminati, the Freemasons, and the Bilderberg Group. The meticulous detail in these scenes, from the specific masks and robes to the cryptic gestures exchanged by participants, has been dissected endlessly by those searching for deeper meaning. One of the most discussed aspects is the ritual itself, which begins with a symbolic circle of submission performed by nude women in masks, Their silent obedience and synchronization suggest not just a hierarchy but an unyielding control over their individuality. The Hierophant, clad in a blood-red robe, leads the proceedings with gestures that echo real-world descriptions of occult rituals. Conspiracy theorists have pointed out the parallels to alleged initiation rites of secret organizations, where submission and loyalty are tested through symbolic acts of vulnerability. The film's production design reinforces these interpretations. The mansion where the ritual occurs is opulent yet isolated, emphasizing the exclusivity and secrecy of its inhabitants. The room where the ceremony takes place is adorned with iconography resembling classical occult symbols. Pentagrams subtly etched into the architecture, floor patterns reminiscent of labyrinths, and an altar positioned as the focal point of power. Kubrick's choice to bathe the scene in warm, flickering candlelight evokes the atmosphere of a clandestine meeting, a world lit by its own rules, separate from the reality outside. Specific visual elements have also drawn comparisons to elite gatherings theorized by conspiracy theorists. The masks worn by attendees, each unique, evoke not just anonymity, but individuality subsumed into collective secrecy. Some theorists have linked these masks to Venetian masquerade traditions, historically associated with deception, seduction, and clandestine power plays. Others point to the recurring use of animal imagery, such as masks resembling owls and predators, as a nod to organizations like Bohemian Grove, where the owl serves as a prominent symbol of wisdom, surveillance, and power. Conspiracy theorists argue that the owl's connection to Bohemian Grove extends beyond mere symbolism, tying into the alleged worship of Abraxas, a Gnostic figure representing the duality of creation and destruction. In this context, the owl becomes a representation of the elite's claimed mastery over both chaos and order, echoing the themes of control and dominance depicted in the film's rituals. Kubrick's inclusion of such imagery, they suggest, may be a deliberate acknowledgement of these esoteric practices and the symbols that define these shadowy power structures. The film's themes of initiation and sacrifice deepen these connections. Bill Harford's journey mirrors a classic initiation arc, one that conspiracy theorists argue reflects the structure of secret societies. His intrusion into the ritual is met with escalating threats, culminating in the self-sacrifice of a mysterious woman who saves him. This act of sacrifice has been interpreted as both a warning and an echo of real-world allegations about the costs of defying elite organizations. Her subsequent death, labeled an overdose, has drawn parallels to the silencing of whistleblowers, or those who challenge established power. Kubrick's portrayal of power dynamics within the secret society is another area of intense scrutiny. The attendees are shown as a blend of aristocrats, politicians, and celebrities, figures who, even in anonymity, radiate authority. The hierarchy is rigid, with the Hierophant wielding absolute control and enforcing brutal consequences for defiance. This portrayal aligns closely with conspiracy theories that suggest secret societies maintain their grip on power through a combination of exclusivity, ritualized loyalty, and the ever-present threat of exposure. Conspiracy theorists have also highlighted Kubrick's use of music as a symbolic layer within the film. The haunting chants, featuring reversed Romanian liturgical texts, create a dissonant and otherworldly tone. This choice has been interpreted as Kubrick's commentary on the inversion of traditional morality within these elite circles, rituals that co-opt sacred practices for profane purposes. Even minor details have been dissected for meaning. The presence of an obelisk-like structure in one scene, the prominence of checkerboard patterns in the mansion's floors, reminiscent of Masonic imagery, and subtle colour coding between characters all contribute to the sense that every element was intentionally placed to convey a hidden narrative. Kubrick's notorious perfectionism lends credibility to the idea that nothing in the film was accidental. The film's climax deepens the parallel. A woman who sacrifices herself to save Cruise's character, Bill Harford, is later found dead under ambiguous circumstances. The official explanation, an overdose, fails to convince. The implication is clear: she paid the ultimate price for defying the society's ironclad secrecy. For conspiracy theorists, this mirrors Kubrick's own fate. Was the film's narrative a chilling premonition of his death? By the time Eyes Wide Shut was completed, Kubrick was 70 years old. He had spent his life probing humanity's darkest corners, from the cosmic mysteries of 2001 to the psychological torment of The Shining. Eyes Wide Shut wasn't just another chapter in his career. It was the culmination of a lifetime spent grappling with power, morality, and the cost of knowledge. For Kubrick, it was a story worth telling, even if it came at the ultimate price. Kubrick's final days carry an air of unease that fuels these suspicions. On March 1st, 1999, he screened what he declared the definitive cut of Eyes Wide Shut. Within days he was dead, officially from a heart attack. Accounts from those close to him describe a man at once triumphant and wary, as if aware he had crossed a dangerous line. He had reportedly spoken of the immense pressure he felt from studio executives, with some alleging that heated arguments over the film's content had erupted in the weeks leading up to his death. Adding to the intrigue, rumours persisted of major edits significantly reducing the runtime of the film. While the studio denies this, we do know that scenes were trimmed and digital figures were added to obscure elements of the infamous ritual, the stated reason, securing an R rating. Yet conspiracy theorists argue this was an act of censorship, a deliberate move to sanitize a film that revealed too much. If cut only to secure an R rating for theatres, why has Kubrick's original cut never been released on home video? Kubrick's decision to make Eyes Wide Shut was, in many ways, his final act of defiance. If his earlier films hinted at hidden truths, this one screamed them. It's a portrait of a man who, after decades of working on the periphery of power, chose to shine a light directly into its darkest corners. And in doing so, he may have signed his own death warrant. For those willing to look closer, Eyes Wide Shut isn't just a film about a secret society. It's a mirror held to our own world, reflecting the forces that control us, the lies we tell ourselves, and the price of knowing too much. And for Kubrick, the ultimate question remains: what did he uncover and who wanted him silenced? Kubrick's work has often been compared to a chess game, a deliberate intellectual pursuit where every move is calculated and meaningful. But what if his films weren't just masterpieces of cinema? What if they were a trail of breadcrumbs, a coded narrative left behind for those willing to piece together the puzzle? Consider the recurring motifs that span his entire body of work: surveillance, manipulation, and the intersection of power and morality. These themes weave through Dr. Strangelove, 2001, The Shining, Eyes Wide Shut, and even Full Metal Jacket. In Dr. Strangelove, Kubrick laid bare the absurdities of global power, exposing the fragility of human systems and the madness that underpins nuclear brinkmanship. The war room's iconic table, illuminated under an ominous glow, feels less like a film set and more like a sanctum where real-world decisions of life and death are made. Then there's Full Metal Jacket, which on the surface is a war film, but, like much of Kubrick's work, delves deeper into the dehumanizing machinery of power. The film's first half, set in a brutal boot camp, reveals how individuals are stripped of identity and transformed into instruments of a larger, unfeeling system. Through the lens of conspiracy, the relentless drills and psychological torment can be seen as metaphors for the methods used by elites to control the masses, a chilling parallel to themes Kubrick explored in A Clockwork Orange. From the iconic hexagonal carpet in The Shining, evoking NASA's precision and the structured geometry of a launch pad, to the masks in Eyes Wide Shut, faceless symbols of elite anonymity and control, these elements transcend artistic design. They serve as Kubrick's subtle commentary on the mechanisms that govern society, and perhaps the forces that shaped his own life. Kubrick's films, when viewed together, feel less like standalone works and more like chapters in an overarching narrative. From the dystopian warnings of A Clockwork Orange to the grand, cosmic inquiries of 2001, his movies challenge us to question our reality and the forces shaping it. Was this intentional, or are we seeing patterns where none exist? That's the brilliance of Kubrick. He left enough ambiguity to ensure the questions endure long after the credits roll. By the time Kubrick died in 1999, the moon landing conspiracy had become cultural lore. Yet its connection to Kubrick remains one of the most enduring and divisive theories tied to his name. The idea that Kubrick, a filmmaker obsessed with control and perfection, could have orchestrated such a massive deception ties directly to the themes that permeate his work. Why would a man with an unrelenting pursuit of truth involve himself in such a grand illusion? Perhaps the better question is, did Kubrick see the moon landing as the ultimate expression of power, where truth is moulded by those who hold it? And did he find himself entangled in a narrative too dangerous to escape? If the Apollo program was the spark that ignited Kubrick's alleged entanglement with shadowy powers, it also laid the groundwork for his fascination with the blurred line between truth and fiction. Could his cinematic perfectionism have been co-opted, used to construct a lie so convincing it became reality? The cultural impact of the conspiracies surrounding Stanley Kubrick has seeped deeply into popular culture, creating a lasting influence on film analysis, documentaries, and the imaginations of countless theorists. Documentaries like Room 237 offer obsessive dissections of The Shining, treating it less as a film and more as a cryptic manifesto, exploring everything from the moon landing theory to Kubrick's commentary on genocide and systemic control. These films have ignited debates that transcend mere cinema, pulling audiences into the labyrinth of meaning Kubrick may, or may not, have embedded in his work. Books and articles have also sought to decode Kubrick's films, often treating his entire oeuvre as a single, interconnected narrative. Works like Jay Weidner's Kubrick's Odyssey push the moon landing theory further, suggesting that 2001: A Space Odyssey was not only a cinematic masterpiece, but a rehearsal for the Apollo footage. Others have turned to Eyes Wide Shut, with critics and fans speculating that its unsettling portrayal of secret rituals was Kubrick's most daring exposé. The internet has amplified these discussions, with forums, blogs, and YouTube channels dedicated to parsing every frame of Kubrick's films. Fan theories range from the plausible to the wildly speculative, but all share a fascination with Kubrick's ability to provoke questions about the forces shaping society. These theories have also inspired filmmakers and artists to explore themes of control, secrecy, and deception in their own works, demonstrating the far-reaching impact of Kubrick's legacy. Kubrick's name has become synonymous with mystery and intellect. His films are touchstone for those drawn to the intersections of art, politics, and conspiracy. Whether or not he intended his work to carry such weight, it has undeniably shaped the way we view not just cinema, but the power structures it reflects. Kubrick's films force us to grapple with uncomfortable truths about power, perception, and the fine line between reality and illusion. If the moon landing conspiracy marked his entry into the shadowy world of the elite, it also set the stage for a career that peeled back humanity's deepest fears and highest aspirations. In the end, it's not just about whether Kubrick faked the moon landing, it's about the bigger question. What narratives did he shape, and what truths did he leave behind for us to uncover? In the summer of 1999, just months after Stanley Kubrick's death, Eyes Wide Shut premiered to a mixture of intrigue and controversy. Audiences were captivated by its haunting imagery and labyrinthine narrative, yet a recurring sentiment lingered among critics. Something felt incomplete, as though an essential piece of the puzzle had been excised. The pacing, the transitions, the enigmatic symbolism, each seemed to hint at a grander vision left unrealized. Some critics openly questioned whether the film audiences saw was truly Kubrick's definitive cut, or if the studio's alterations had ruined what was to be his final masterpiece. For Kubrick's devotees, these alterations were a betrayal of the director's singular vision. Could the missing elements have contained the film's most damning revelations? Or were they merely fragments of a larger tapestry of mystery, forever lost to the cutting room floor? The film's reception further fueled its mythology. Some reviewers lauded Eyes Wide Shut as a masterpiece, a hypnotic exploration of desire and secrecy. Others dismissed it as slow and impenetrable, its meaning obscured by deliberate ambiguity. Yet even among its detractors there was a grudging acknowledgement. Eyes Wide Shut wasn't just a film. It was a riddle, a challenge, and perhaps Kubrick's parting gift, or warning. This sense of incompleteness, of an artist's silence before his final statement, cemented Eyes Wide Shut as more than a movie. It became a mystery, one that continues to haunt the legacy of Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick's films remain as haunting and elusive as the man himself, filled with riddles, symbols, and whispered truths. His meticulous filmmaking style, marked by an obsession with detail and an almost otherworldly ability to craft visual and thematic puzzles, has made him a natural subject for conspiracy theories. His works resonate with the air of a man who understood the mechanisms of power and the fragility of truth, a combination that continues to captivate audiences and theorists alike. Through his unflinching explorations of human nature, societal control, and the secrets that shape our world, Kubrick left behind more than just a cinematic legacy. He left us with questions. How much of what we see can be trusted? What lies behind the narratives we are told? And most provocatively, was Kubrick himself entangled in the systems he sought to expose? His films invite us to look deeper, challenging us to see beyond the frame and consider the forces shaping the stories we consume. Kubrick's work asks us to grapple with the role of art in revealing or concealing the truth. Is cinema a tool for exposing reality, or is it a veil, a crafted illusion that distracts from the forces operating in the shadows? In the end, Kubrick leaves us with the ultimate enigma. Were his films an act of defiance against the powerful, or a chilling glimpse into the compromises required to survive their influence? The truth, much like Kubrick's films, remains tantalizingly out of reach, urging us to keep searching. What we uncover might say less about Stanley Kubrick and more about the world and the stories we choose to believe.